In relationship, I think we really overcomplicate what does the other person need for me to be able to move forward. And I think building is a huge part of that.
Hi, and welcome to the Storia podcast where storytellers disrupt. I'm David Noronha.
And I'm Fabiano Altamura.
Before we dive in, I just love, he has a character for every single one of his name introductions that I love in dialects. But before we dive into more characters and dialects from Fab, please remember to like, subscribe, follow, and give us that 5-star review. Brother, we're in part 2 with a very special guest. Who are they?
Antonio Marin and Dr. Allison Marin.
Wow.
5-time Grammy nominees, multiple Dove Awards.
Flock of doves.
Flock of doves, flock of seagulls, hair.
Seagulls.
Director of Bethel Music College, chief of staff at Bethel Church. So welcome back for episode 2, guys.
All right. So in episode 1, if you didn't see this episode, we did a little bit of beautiful orchestration between violin and cello of
I see what
a
you
little
did
bit
there.
You see what I did there?
Yeah, I did.
See what I did there? A little musical metaphor of their personal life, the beginning of their love relationship. If you're an artist and you're looking for love in all the wrong places, and in some of the right places as well, you're going to want to rewind and watch episode 1. We also picked up a little bit of how you guys fell in love with music. So we're going to continue your story kind of chronologically, and we're going to pick up.
That's great.
We kind of cliffhanged in the last episode with maybe when you had that longing look along. You were in the UK and missing this Latin Antonio Banderas. I call him the Latin Jesus whenever he walks in the room.
I call him the Spanish Sean Foyt.
Oh, there you go.
Hey, that's a good one.
I love it.
I'm honored.
Do you guys remember the moment where you're like, we're going to take this leap of faith and say yes to this relationship? Antonio, what's your recollection of that moment?
Yeah. Well, again, so glad to be here, and so it's such an enjoyable conversation with you guys. You guys are incredible to talk to. Thank you for having us. I think that the bottom line for me was commitment, right? And I think there's a point where sort of in my experience as a you just gotta get to that point where you're like, okay, am I willing to choose this person to a higher level of covenant? Am I willing to protect this relationship with a higher level of covenant that I am protecting other relationships? And yes, I am. Huh. And then you respond to that between you and the Lord. Kind of, you made that decision in your heart. And then, and now you take the risk, right? Hey, how do you feel about, taking this to the next level? Here's what it looks like for me to take that to the next level. I want to make this exclusive. I want to make this, this is my intention, and I want to lead on that. What do you need from me to feel safe?
Wow.
To feel set up for success? To feel that you can, you can have you can thrive, and so we, I would like to say that I did that in every one of my dating relationships. No, but I was 28 at the time, so I had sort of, a little bit of journey, and at that point in my life, I wanted to do it right. I wanted to get it right. It's one of those things you're like, I've experienced the dysfunction, and the heartache, and the brokenness and the pain of not doing things right, not acting with honor, and not leading in covenant, and not protecting, and I was at the point where I was like, no, I want to do it. I want to do it right. Not just because it's a part of our story, and I want our story. You look at your relationship, you're like, I want this story. I want to be able to tell my story like we're telling it today.
Wow. So you intentionally asked questions. I love those 2 questions that he asked. How do I protect this?
Yeah.
And what do you need from me?
Yeah.
So that when I look back and I tell the story of my relationship, it's a story of intention.
Yeah, it's a story. It's something you sow.
And I actually remember him saying that. It comes back to me often of, I need you, like something I need from you is to commit that you will let me know what you need. Like, I'm going to put it on you as your responsibility to let me know. I'm not going to read into it or try to guess what you need. I still remember it to this day.
What effect did that have on your heart as a woman?
Yeah. I mean, definitely it made me feel safe, which I think we've talked some about, like, what are the motivating factors? Like, what do guys and girls need in a relationship? Like, what are some things that they get from it? And I think, I mean, definitely a motivating factor for one is to feel safe. That helps them open up.
Yeah.
I mean, he had done a good job all along. I was also, by the time we got married, I was 28. So I was like late 20s, but he actually intentionally had a conversation with my dad.
Fun fact, and hold that thought. When I first met Allison, I thought she was 20 or 21 because she
like,
looked,
she still looks
so beautiful, young, and
she just graduated high school.
Exactly.
Just exude purity and glory. And I was like, there's no way that this person is 26 or 27. And then it was later down that I found that she was like,
it's my birthday. He's like, how old are you turning? At that point, I was turning 26. He's like, oh,
27?
Like, why do you care? 26, 27, yeah.
Wow.
Why do you care?
This is beautiful because I don't know that it's popular in our culture today for a woman to say out loud, what I want and what I need from a man is to be made to feel protected and to feel safe.
Yeah.
And what I find really fascinating as well, when people come together, they're like, "Whoa, I feel called to Africa. You feel called to Switzerland. We can't date."
Yeah.
How did you navigate the fact that you were called here? You felt called to the UK.
Yeah.
Really good.
How did you factor that in? And what made you come to the decision to choose?
I think at the time it was pre-Brexit, so she probably thought, he has a European passport, so that gets me
help
England.
Get me more towards my. Honestly,
that's a joke.
There was kind of a risk in there because I was playing with Bethel Music at the time. There definitely seemed like similarities. He was touring and doing music. He was in education. I'd also done education. There seemed similarities, but definitely with me heading off on my journey with education, like moving to Davis, getting my master's, that whole thing, journey he'd actually already gone through. It was like, okay, how much of this actually are we on the same airplane going to the same country? And that definitely was a risk factor. But by the time we actually committed to take it to the next level, there was enough there that we're like, no, there's building material. And I think that's a huge thing for us in relationship. I think we really overcomplicate what does the other person need for me to be able to move forward. And I think building is a huge part of that.
Let me ask a question, because I think under Fab's, which is a great question, under Fab's question as well, is this idea of, in order to make it work, unpopular word, you got to compromise.
Yeah.
Like there's some kind of, because alignment, another way of saying alignment is there was a direction you were headed. There was a direction you were headed. Had we not met, I might have flown over to the UK. I might have gone to Davis. And then, but suddenly you met this guy. Was there anything that you feel, not in a bad way, willingly chose to compromise in order to journey together? And what was that?
I would say yes, though interestingly enough, it was an alignment. It actually felt right. So I kind of just circle back to the first episode, moved back to England for that summer. And a couple weeks in was like, what am I doing here? Like it started to click in my heart. I wasn't even having convinced myself. And it wasn't just because I was in love, which at that point, I think I had definitely was what people call in love experience, which hopefully continues. I think that's a choice. I think that's a choice you make in your relationship. It wasn't only that. I realized that in a way, sometimes we feel we're moving into a space, but it's just a doorway to get us to another space. And so I moved to England. I was like, oh, I thought this was where I was headed, but it's actually a doorway to something. And the same, actually, I came back from England and I moved to Davis. And we had agreed at that point of like, you know what? We'll figure it out.
So you went to Davis?
I went to Davis.
Okay. And you went with?
No, he stayed here. So we basically were like, he's like, I will support you in that. Like, it's a sacrifice. We'll figure out even what timeline this means for us. But I support your decision to go there.
For those that aren't from this particular area, Davis is about, what, an hour and a half, 2 hours? So not too far away.
Not too far, but I actually moved down there. I didn't commute. But it was a funny thing. It was the same thing. Day one, I walked to my classes and I'm like, it's a different season. I am actually in a whole different season. This was a doorway to get me somewhere else.
I love what you just said, because I think we often confuse geography with calling.
Yeah, we do. And I think, God our calling never looks like what we think it looks like.
No,
and I think he's more interested in relationship than he is your calling. At the end of the day, you're not going to be held accountable on Judgment Day to what you did with your calling.
Which is interesting because they were called, but they chose relationship, which is exactly what you just said the Lord asked you to do.
Yeah, the Lord asked you to do that. You know, what I'd like to really hear is, it's beautiful how you guys met. A lot of artists talk about burnout and balance, right? Which I don't even know if really, because we look at capacity nowadays and I'm like, geez, Louise, it feels like people's capacity has gone way, way, way low. And I'm not trying to say like live in a busy lifestyle. That's not what I'm communicating. Because I think busyness is a lifestyle without intention.
Yeah.
And you guys, you work harder than most people that I see. Your life feels like, I mean, for you, it could be balanced, but for somebody on the outside, they could be like, wow, that's a really intense schedule. I'd love you to talk about, to artists that watch this, what you feel about burnout and balance. And do they, are they real to you? Do they exist? Do you ever feel that at times that you may be out of the two?
I think that's a great question. I would just
share the phrase about burnout versus, do you remember what that one doctor once said?
Yeah. Remind me of to share that at the end of this thing. I think that'd be great. I think I like to put an example on this first.
Yeah.
Just because I think it's important for people to understand growth. They say change is inevitable,
Really good,
but growth is optional.
Ooh, that's good.
So there's no way you're going to avoid change.
Yeah.
We don't stay 4 years old.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Thank goodness.
Thankfully. I mean, here's the thing. It's cute when you see a 2-year-old walking on hands and knees. But if you see a 40-year-old walking on hands and knees, it's not cute anymore.
They need vaccines.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Something else going on.
And so it's embarrassing, right? Nobody would be like, oh, cute. Oh my God, look at, Antonio. Oh my gosh, right there on the BETHEL stage walking on hands and
knees.
Right? So now we understand that when it comes to aging. We understand that when it comes to, let's say, going to the gym. You go to the gym and you can lift 50 pounds, right? And your goal is to lift 200 pounds. There's no way that you're going to be able to do that in 1 week.
Right.
Well, because we live in a time dimension in which there is certain rules of physics, right? That you cannot bend, right? Now, you can bend them. Let's just put it this way, but we'll not get into that at this point in time. but there are certain rules, right? So when we all understand that if you want to get stronger, you have to do what? You got to go to the gym every day. You have to have that resistance, right? Pain, sweat, and tears. And then what happens is you hit your limit. I can't lift more than 50 pounds. I've tried. I can't. Okay, we're going to do 50 for a week. And then we're going to add 50.1.
Yeah.
And now and after a week, oh my gosh, 50.1, and then 60, and then 70. And then after a year, oh my gosh, 100 pounds. I can lift 100 pounds. Now, if you never took yourself to the extreme, to the point of breaking, to the point of, I cannot go a single moment more like this. I literally am. Then you don't know first what your limit is.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
And then you don't know what the gap between your growth, right, where you want to be, your goal. They call that the God gap, right? I think Darlene Check in her book about mentoring, she talks about this God gap, and that's the difference between when you finish, where your dream is, and when you're finished. There's a gap between that, and then that's called the God gap, right? And in order to exercise and to enter into the God gap, you have to hit your limit. And now that preaches really nice. And that it's very inspiring. Everybody here says, "Yeah, the God gap, I'm gonna hit
but
the
they're
limit."
sitting and they're listening while you tell them this message.
Yes.
But now go out and do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Get to the point where you haven't slept in 2 nights. I'm not recommending this, by the way. I'm not a doctor or a licensed psychologist. I'm not telling you what to do. Okay, I'm just telling you out of my experience, what it is like to hit a limit and say, "I will not settle for this." If we just settle for the lowest common denominator, then we would still be in the bush, in Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Like there would not be. I mean, everything that we've accomplished as human beings and as people is because we hit a limit. I'm tired and done of getting in the rain. I'm tired of getting sick and not having medicine. We get tired of things, but you gotta get to that point.
Yeah.
And artists generally, generally speaking, it depends on the artist. I'm not gonna generalize it, but what I would say is like, there's different kinds of people. There's people that are okay with getting to their limit. And there's other people, for whatever reason, maybe they haven't created that internal space, that internal culture to be able to hit the pain point and actually continue going. Does that make sense? They'd be like, oh, I'm done. I just feel like I need, I mean, especially in this culture here, Bethel, sometimes you hear some of these BSM students talking, bless them, and thankful for each and every one of them. I want to say that loud and clear. But it's like, sometimes you realize you're just young. You're just young.
You have
need
little
to,
muscles. You have 5 pounds.
You're lifting like you just came to the gym, right?
Right.
And it's okay. Bless you in that
You're a little
season.
bit sore.
Yeah.
I remember we both came, well, I'm a little bit older than you. Don't say a lot older.
You're considerably older than me, to be honest, if I'm being honest.
Just open the door for that comment.
In the comments, will the first person to think who's old and by how many years will give you a prize?
Just notice the gray first before commenting down
Sage.
below. Sage.
Wisdom.
It's actually sober. Anyway,
But younger.
So here's what I know. So I was 39 going on 40 when I went to BSSM. So I had 3 boys at the time that I think were, like in elementary school.
Yeah.
I was still shooting in LA. And I was the one going full throttle too. So like Fab, when Fab came up here, multiple businesses, kids, the whole thing while going to full-time school of ministry. And I'll never forget when I would show up at RG and, God bless them again, these young 20 somethings that maybe this is their high school or their college or whatever. They're coming for the first time. They're like, oh, I'm so tired. I was like, really? Are you working? No. My parents are helping me through school. Okay, cool. But you didn't get your reading done?
Yeah.
Because I listened to the Bible while I drove to SAC to go shoot a show.
Yeah.
100%.
And
every moment is maximized.
We were writing, directing, and producing the biggest show Bethel has seen to date.
Yeah.
So, Allison, let me ask you a question. What has music taught you about resilience? And do you remember when you first caught sight of that revelation?
Yeah, I do think actually that music formed a very important resilience and responsibility aspect of who I am today that has carried into working and my schooling and everything that we do. I remember someone once shared their master's thesis. It might have been yours. They studied the effect of kids who are in math, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. That's
who are in a math class that were in orchestra, and those who were not, and their grades. And of course, like the expected outcome is that those who were in orchestra would have a higher math score. But it wasn't as simple as that. And research found that it was a halo effect around the child that actually influenced their math grade, including the community of orchestra, the discipline of having to practice an instrument, and many other things. So I do think for me, growing up in the family that I did, it was non-negotiable that I would practice my violin. And no matter if I sucked at it or hit a wall, that I had to continue on. And so I think that built within me a resilience that I still reap.
For those that are listening that are unfamiliar with the rigors of classical training and classical music, be it for acting, be it for dance, be it for music, I'm curious, regular week, regular day for you, what would a day's worth, a week's worth of practice look like in your home?
I mean, probably into my peak practice.
What time do you get up every day when you were a child?
Oh, well, one point in my high school, because I was homeschooled, actually. And so I, one season, got up at 4 a.m. in the morning to start my homework so I could be done at 12.
Wow.
So I could then go practice and then have a few hours at the end of my day to relax.
And how long would you practice on a daily basis?
An hour and a half to 2. And that was very highly maximized. So probably if I had actually dawdled around, it would have been more like 3 hours. But I literally...
You were very focused.
I was very focused. So not to... Maybe I'm telling on myself, but I would have my lesson, whatever my goals were, but by my next lesson, I would break it down per day, per minute.
You're the only
in
operational violinist that I've ever heard in my entire life.
And so I maximized my time. So I knew exactly what I was doing every single moment of my practice.
Yeah.
Concentrated. It was
Very,
concentrated.
very
Super
concentrated. Yeah.
I did more like 3-4 hours, but I do it all around a lot.
You'd have a cigar in between.
Yes, exactly.
Cigar in between, glass of wine. Wait a second. Oh, I just stopped and wait. This is a really nice Cuban right now.
Go to the cafe.
Yeah, exactly. Mañana.
Yeah. Or I would get start improvising too, and I loved it. Like, I just spent 30 minutes improvising. I haven't done my scales yet, you know.
So listen, I want to keep digging in this well of music now that we've returned to music. I'm curious. Antonio, what has been one of the deepest encounters with the Lord that you've had while playing your instrument on stage, or playing the cello that you can recall? And I'm sure you've had many.
Man, that's I think every single time I get in my instrument, here's what I feel. I do remember one that just came to my mind. I was playing actually the piano, and I was just playing, actually, not just practicing or trying to record something. Just having fun, just playing. And I just started feeling the glory, just the moment you just feel this inspiration, and then I take my phone and put it up there because I was like, oh, this is good. I gotta capitalize on this, right?
Catch the glory, yeah.
And it left. It's like, what? Ooh. So I turned it off. Kept playing. Oh, here it is. All of a sudden, this thought pops in my mind. I'm not making theology out of this. I'm not making this further, but this is a thought that pops in my mind. There's an angel that only comes when you're not trying to capitalize on music. You know, when you're, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh, and I literally just put my phone aside. So okay, this moment.
Yeah,
it's not. This is for the Lord. This is sacred,
intimate.
Right? And then in that same vein, I was one time playing, and I was sort of asking the Lord what the secret was for those that when they sung or they played, something divine happened in the room, right? And what I heard the Lord say, and I won't share the whole thing, but I'll share the part that I feel I have permission to share. And it's like for those to sing to Him in private, those who sing to Him in private, to play for Him in private, He'll sing with you in public. Oh. He'll play with you in public. So if you sing to Him in private, He'll sing with you in public. And those two experiences have probably been, they were not on stage. They were not in front. I've had plenty of powerful experiences in recordings in church and all of those things. But I think the most meaningful ones for me are the ones that I've had by myself with the instrument. You know, I recall a third one being in my parents' house. I had a stairway to a 3-story house, a big staircase. There was just a lot of reverb in there, a lot of really nice, I remember just playing there. And I I'm just going off and just playing, just having
loving the sound of your instrument,
just loving the sound of the instrument and just the melody, and all of a sudden, I get this picture in my head of the Lord looking at me.
Oh.
Just taking I never had that experience before. That sort of thought pop into my mind. Now I understand now what it was, and I understood in the moment a glimpse of what it was, of His value for our communion in the middle of music. His value for this hallelujah. I feel the glory of that. Thank you, Jesus, for your face. Oh, thank you, God, for the way you value our gift. Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you for the gift. Yeah, I just really feel
Antonio encounters the Lord.
I feel that because it's dear to me, and I feel I have permission to share. There's other ones that I don't feel I have permission to share because it's just kind of too sacred. It's just between Him and me. But these ones are things that I feel made a difference in my approach to the Lord through the language of music.
And now you get to bless us all because you're on every single worship album in the world, aren't you? Elevation, Upper Room, Bethel. You get to share the Maverick. You get to bless everybody else right now with that encounter that you both had with the Lord in private. Now you're doing it in public.
Yeah, what an honor.
The moment that you remember, or a moment, an encounter with the Lord while playing.
Yeah,
the violin.
honestly, I remember one moment when you were sharing about playing at the keys. I remember we had just gotten married, and it's been a beautiful journey for me of learning how to use the language of music and express myself. That definitely has been a journey for me. I feel like I'm still learning how to capture the language and translate it, and capturing more a sound of heaven and translating it for people here so they can hear and we can all partake of it. But I was sitting I think you were making dinner, and I was sitting playing, and I just started creating words. Honestly, that's sometimes when I encounter the Lord's, when I just start singing and creating words that I just feel His
Some
presence
people call that
draw.
Songwriting. No.
Well, actually, and it's not even for the purpose of songwriting, but just to actually just create a moment with the Lord.
Yeah.
That I feel Him so near, and that those are really dear to me.
Hallelujah.
I have really special moments on stage too. But honestly, it's interesting. Sometimes I almost experience the glory of the moment afterwards sometimes versus than in it. Like I remember a moment pretty starkly. We were in Vienna playing with Jeremy Riddle, and the song Yeshua I hadn't actually heard it before. So I didn't know that it was an actual song. And we, true Jeremy style, we had come down the band, nothing was happening. Everybody dropped out. And all of a sudden the people started singing Yeshua. And I thought it was a song that the people were actually making up. I didn't know it was one that had just been written. And so it sounded to me like just the sound of Vienna, which it was, the sound of the people arising. And then we started playing. We felt like we need to actually lend to the land, because when we were in Vienna, it was crazy. Often you'll look out in the crowd when it's like a big moment and you'll see them like air guitar or air drumming. They would air violin. Like it's so much a part of their heritage is strings and the classical traditions. And so it was interesting to play in that land and actually play a sound that was so familiar to the people. So that definitely marked me, is the people's sound and us being able to partner with the sound of the land within that. So I guess it's not necessarily a one-on-one with the Lord, but it was very special.
When you say
to me,
air drumming and air guitaring, you mean miming?
Yes.
They don't play really?
No, so people like out in the crowd, you look out and they're like faking.
Sorry. Oh, okay. I thought you mean the people on stage. I was like, I can imagine Jeremy Riddle on stage going like,
we have Fab's a foreigner.
I'm so sorry.
So we got
No, I did not explain that well.
Okay, I was going to be like, wow, we were all air drumming. We're backtrack.
I was
sorry.
I was thinking Phil Collins. I can feel it coming in the air tonight.
Yes, because when basically like people, when you look out, they're part of like participating in worship. Sometimes
the audience sometimes is like acting like they were playing an instrument.
But they would actually acted like,
I thought they were on stage.
In Vienna, they don't do air guitar or air drums. They do air cello.
Air cello,
violin, which I'd never seen before. It was crazy.
That's awesome.
I got a chance to go to the Vienna Opera House. I was in Budapest and went over there, and it is fascinating to me, and I've never thought of it this way, that there would be an instrument or a group, a family of instruments that is representative of a people. But if we think about it, like in Afro-Cuban culture, it would be percussion, it would be drums, right? In many ways. And it's fascinating to me. I mean, it almost makes me wonder if when God looks at the planet, almost as if He's assigned families of instruments, and if the whole world, anyways, I'm going to get a little bit weird.
No, most of that most of it goes to,
like, let's dive in there.
Italy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
no,
Italy. I would say.
I'm just saying.
I would say it's the voice. You are the land.
Well, and the violins and ballet and fashion and.
But I think, but if I may, for 1 second,
wine, food. Shall I continue? I just
list is quite long.
Okay,
pretty long.
At the risk of feeding your hubris, no. But what I was going to say was, what I was going to say was the Italians have developed, and I mean maybe the French and the Germans would claim this as well. But I mean, when I think of opera, I do have to say I might bias towards the Italians for 1 second. The development of the human voice to a stratospheric level for me is fascinating. Guys, for those that aren't maybe familiar with Bethel, or that are but are kind of fascinated with the behind the scenes, if you will, and maybe not behind the scenes, but the on the stage when Brian or Jen turns to, and the nonverbals that you guys are calling out to each other. What gets said physically when the strings get called forward in those moments of spontaneous worship? Allison, what is being communicated to you? Do you remember a moment? What is it that the worship leader, typically the vocalist at the front, is calling out of the strings in you?
Yeah.
What do you think they're calling out for?
I mean, honestly, it is different per time, I would say. This would be more speaking, I guess, to people who are learning how to take risk and actually step out. I remember connecting with worship leaders before the set and being like, hey, if there's a moment, like, let me know, kind of being like, I'm gonna stand back until you actually want. And I realized in time that often worship leaders are looking to us to actually like, are you guys hearing anything? What is that? And so now kind of where we are, and I feel it's a journey that will continue, but it very much is a partnership. And so there are sometimes moments like Sunday night, like a week and a half ago, both Brian and Jen turned to us. Like they were feeling something in the moment. We had you could feel there was a spontaneous flow that was an invitation for it to happen. And they both turned around to us and were like, if you feel something, basically go for it. So that definitely does happen. Sometimes there's a melody that, say, the keys have already picked up, or the worship leader, they've started to just vocalize something. They're not actually singing words that we'll pick up on and actually just go for it.
Almost
that
variations, like they give you a theme.
Exactly. The cadenza we were talking about, that you take the theme of the song and actually make something new with it. And so it happens multiple ways, but definitely a lot of the people that we play with, we have years of history.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of trust. But sometimes when they're feeling it very strongly, they will turn to us.
So you guys are almost like jazz musicians in a sense of themes get established.
And you sort of
audience
operate with a
taught,
theme.
and then you hand off for these somewhat solos and whatnot.
Yeah.
Antonio, what is that like for you? What are you looking for in the moment to either step forward or listen for these spontaneous moments?
Yeah. I normally, before I set, I pray, and I just ask Jesus, what is he doing? It was a simple prayer. Jesus, what are you doing? And then sometimes I hear things like says like I'm rejoicing over this moment, and then I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do? What do I do about that? And it's a simple prayer, but it helps me calibrate, helps me sort of posture myself towards connecting with Christ, the anointed one, right? In the moment, and sometimes I hear like, I want you to rejoice with me, or I want you to. Sometimes I've heard say like, I'm blessing you, and I'm like, what do I do? Receive the blessing. And in the moment, I just, it's things like that. I just posture myself to that. But in the moment, I go to the biblical examples of things. Of things like this. So where in the Bible there is a time where an instrument has had a power to change, to impact a nation. And I just, I think we're all very familiar with that passage when King David was invited. He wasn't invited to the church of his day. He was invited to the palace of his day. He was invited to the place of most influence of his day, the king's palace,
the White House.
He was invited to the place where the most influential place of his time, and somehow when the king said, "Hey, is there anyone that can play an instrument?" Somehow he must have already done the rounds, because I know Israel was not that big at the time, but at least there were other people, I'm sure, that played the harp at the time. But at least his name came around. Why? Because again, he had been doing it in the secret. He had been playing for the Lord already. The Lord already knew his sound. So when the time came to be called forth, his sound was already known in the atmosphere, if you will, in heaven. And so I always go back to that passage because I'm mindful that sometimes words can get in the way. And what we see at times, in order to understand a lyric, it first has to go through your brain, and then to your heart, so to speak. Maybe that's not technically what's happening, brain, heart. Some people, what's your heart? What's your brain? But just as a way to conceptualize this thing, just
go with them.
The brain first, right, and then the heart. If I play a melody, you don't have to think about it. As a matter of fact, there's an experiment with people that have Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
They don't have a memory of any conceptual, any their cognition is gone. But it's not so with their intuition. You see their ability to connect. And so they hear a melody and they remember. This is so because the heart, I read an article, the heart has somewhere like 90,000 or a bunch of thousands brain cells on it. Meaning that when we play a melody, the heart understands it before the brain does.
It actually remembers as well.
Yeah. And so if you think about it this way, it's like going back to the Holy Spirit, he's interceding for us. So I think what we're doing is interceding. We're bringing about an atmosphere of intercession. Benny Johnson, she passed now, but she used to say something, at least twice I heard her say this to us. And it's like, Antonio, the cello is for intercession and the violin is for healing. I had never heard that before, but I thought it was an interesting thought. I never quite, I never should have, but I never asked her to really elaborate more. She talked a little bit about it, but if there was some science behind it, but the thought of it was very fascinating to me, that the Lord has put an anointing in an instrument. In this case, the cello is intercession and the violin is healing. So then when we're playing, what I'm mindful of the supernatural power of God to create an atmosphere in which his people can talk to him and can be whole, can be made whole, their hearts can be touched, right? And what I've found at times is that we're doing a set and it's all just kind of, okay, song, next song, and then we get to the flow moment, and all of a sudden something cracks open. Something it's like we just began to play these melodies, and all of a sudden people go from their head to their heart. It's the cognition, the questioning, the awareness of understanding the moment in my head, the cognition, of adding 2 + 2, right?
Yeah.
And how does that look like? Right? Goes out. All of a sudden they connect to their heart. Okay. Wow, I feel.
Yeah.
I feel this moment. I don't understand this way. I feel this moment. I'm connected to this moment in my heart.
High praise.
Yes.
I remember when Jeremy Riddle and Stephanie, can't remember who the third person was. I think maybe in Will Matthews, I'm not sure. But it was Our Father.
Yeah.
I think when they encountered the glory cloud at church, and that song, when it transcended, right? When it starts to transcend, it was just, you could feel, it was otherworldly, was unbelievable.
Hallelujah.
I just want to ask one thing, right? As we kind of connect it and tie it into the relationship sort of stuff. You talked about going to the extremes. Any adventurer has to push the extremes, the point of death.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? Like
before resurrection.
Before resurrection. Right. But like we talked about balance, like you guys travel maybe once a week. You're on so many albums. To any new creative or somebody passionately wanting to go after their dreams, right? Whether they may end up coming to us as students or not.
Yes.
The idea of balance and rest, what advice would you give any aspiring artist that comes up, talks about balance and rest?
Yeah.
It's a great question.
You want to go first? Or I can go first. I can go first, whatever.
Sure.
Okay.
I can add to, depending on where you land.
Okay. You want to go first?
Go for it.
Here's what I'm aware too. My spirit is infinite. There's no tiring of my spirit.
Right.
It's impossible to tire infinite. People say, my soul is tired. Your soul is not tired. Your body is tired. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where this stuff. I know that I can't see my soul.
Yeah.
I understand my body. It's right here. I can feel it. It's strapped to this time zone, 3-dimensional space and half a dimension of time. That's my body's right here. My memory can travel in time. I can go back in my memory. So therefore, in my memory, I'm in a full dimension of time. I can go back and forth. In my spirit, in my soul, which is the again, I don't have all the language to describe it, but if we go into sort of in the Christian tradition of our soul, our spirit, the eternal part of us, there's no tiring of that. You can't get that tired. I can go without sleep for a long time, and my spirit won't be tired because my spirit doesn't sleep. It's constantly sitting up in heavenly places with the Father, staring at His beauty of wonder. My body is the one that gets tired. So the simplest thing for me is this: eat right and sleep right. That's it. No, seriously, that's it. If you eat right and you sleep right, you're great. You're gonna be fine. You have plenty of energy. And your body will replenish itself while you sleep and with the food that you eat. Now, if you don't eat right and you sleep right, then you are actually not going to, now we can get into the whole, are you fulfilled? You know,
Yeah.
Is the work that you're doing energizing to you? Is it fulfilling? And there's an aspect of that we can touch on. But even then, you know, I mean, if you sleep right, if you sleep the amount and you eat right, I think probably the biggest thing nowadays is eating wrong. You know, people that eat wrong and just putting all this poison in their body, and they expect to be fulfilled. You know, and you're like, you're tired, you're exhausted, and your body is not actually renewing itself. And so for us, and I don't do great at this all the time, I must admit that.
We're always learning.
But this is our process in our journey. It's like, soul, it's not going to get tired. You can't get the soul, you know, oh, you got to let yourself catch up to you. It's like, I understand the theory of it, you know, but to me, it's more like, I need to get my body rest. Yeah, I understand that, you know.
A doctor one time told us that there's a difference between burnout and exhaustion. And a lot of people are just exhausted, but they think they're burnout. And I think we're really afraid of burnout. We're afraid of hitting a point where I don't know what we're afraid of on the other side of that. Like I push that all the time. We push it a lot to be like, what's actually there? Because I don't think that's almost an illusion sometimes. If like I don't have a lot of yeses, like we make sure we're really prioritized, but those are big yeses. And so within those, how can we push the limits, but make sure that we're actually resting? And so even for us, we make sure we have a day if we're, depending on where we are, that's a Sabbath. That's like, we're not going to do work.
It doesn't have to be Saturday, okay?
It doesn't have to be,
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, but that we actually guard sleep, eating, and then being able to have rest. And then us, of course, being connected, but we do everything together. So we really guard our connection. So that is there. But for me, I'm like,
well, that's a really important one. Connection is really important because
that is very fulfilling in the middle.
We're one.
And
this is what I don't know if some people understand that or not. Maybe I don't want to judge anyone. This is not my place. But for us, it could be very energizing to be around each other, or it could be not energizing, it could be frustrating and stressful, right? Inflammatory, right? Stressful. And so, and it has to do whether or not we're feeling connected. You know, and for us is understanding each other's love languages and speaking those, so that we can feel loved. If we feel loved, then we feel connected. And the connection is sort of like the byproduct of feeling loved for us. You know, I'm feeling loved, then I feel
and not to get too detailed, but it also is stewardship of ourselves around each other. Because I find like if I have a lot going on and I feel stressed, I can put my stress on him. Then that creates a tension in our relationship versus I'm stewarding myself. I can talk about what's going on, but I'm not putting my stress on him. So I think we do things to
sort of taking responsibility over what you need, going back to that place of like, I feel like I need to process. Can I process for like 30 minutes? Does it mean that what you're going to talk about right now is not true? Okay, great.
It's your experience of what's going on. It's not necessarily the truth.
Like, I understand the process, you know, go ahead and process if you need to process. But you've got to establish the rule of the game that this is not true. I'm
not the ultimate reality.
I'm going to tell you a story right now. Once upon a time, there's a man who's hungry.
Exactly.
Hungry.
And we'll ask each other like, so can I give you feedback? Or is this, you're just wanting to say something and I'm not, you're just wanting to process.
Are you inviting me into this as a part of a solution? But it's important for me to understand that because as a man, I want to fix. You want to figure it out. I want to make sure she's safe, right? And so what I hear when I hear I have a problem, I hear, you need someone to come rescue you. You need someone to come and protect you. You need someone to come and be your prince, you know, and make sure you're okay, right? So that's what I hear subconsciously, right? So if I'm told I have a problem, now as opposed to, so we established everything. Okay, so you have a problem. Great. Am I part of the solution, or you just want to, you know, let me in? And you're going to say a lot of things.
And you'll ask for the solution at the end.
That might not make sense. And that's okay.
That's great.
But it's all really important in us feeling connected because that's what we're bringing. Like when we've said before, sometimes couples can take so much energy trying to just get their needs met and work things out within themselves that they don't build. And so marriage is meant to project yourself, like almost launch yourself in a direction together that you're building versus just literally you're stagnant. You're just trying to get your needs met.
Tug of war or wrestling.
Yeah.
Do the math. So if you have 10 hours in one day, and of those 10 hours, you're spending 4 just trying to figure out how to get each other's needs met, then you will not actually get to the point of the green. You're just staying in the red, toying around with the 0. And then 0 meaning I'm loved and connected. Okay, that's 0. That's not the goal of marriage. That's the starting. So, now when we're love and connected, now we're dreaming. Now we're thinking
Building
about, man,
together.
You're in that flow.
in that flow. And then now when you're dreaming, now let's execute this.
Yeah.
So in that execution is sort of the next level. But if you don't have the foundation down and all the time that you have together in a day is spent trying to get to zero,
that's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
And
you never
default
get
has got to be
anything done.
connected, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So
that
default
feeds us.
setting. Yeah.
I think honestly, people are like, how can you do? I'm like, well, there's the grace. Like we definitely feel the grace, supernatural grace of God, but
Yes.
also our
Oh,
relationship so
grace
feeds
all
us
day.
to
Yeah,
be able
which is
to
beautiful.
travel for 30 hours
Yeah.
and jump off and do everything else we're going to do. That really does
Yeah.
feed us.
And you get to be with your best friends.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
why? And if connection energizes, even though the schedule might look full,
Yes.
that schedule is energizing me
Yes.
because I get to be with the
Exactly.
person that energizes
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing.
One last
Yeah.
question before we wrap up. And if you were to send a little message in the bottle back to your 20-year-old self,
Mm.
this artist that was about to embark on a journey, what message would you send to that 20-year-old?
Oh, I love that. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. I think I expected a lot, and I love that because it drove me, and it still drives me to have something that I'm aiming towards. But I think there's a feeling of you'll never attain where you are is never enough. Especially I talk to different creatives, and it's like I should be further ahead, and so I think there is that feeling of I'm not where I should be. I'm not as far as I'd hoped, even at 20. And I look back and I don't even feel that old, but I look back at 20, I'm like, oh, that was driving me. If I could have channeled that somewhere else and not been so hard on myself and actually have more fun along the journey,
Fun.
especially my personality. I need to remember to have fun because I can be quite intense if that's not obvious.
That cheap,
which I'm very
cheap
thankful.
stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful to have a Spanish husband who life
I
is.
have to tell my wife, literally, I had to be like, babe, why don't you go just spend money on yourself? Like, can you
I just want to do something.
There's a couple husbands out there, Antonio, that they're gonna delete this part. No.
Exactly.
I have to tell my bride the same thing. Hey, go be kind to yourself.
Yes, go be kind.
Go get the manicure. Go do the hair. Go get the massage. Like,
Yes,
you
exactly.
deserve it. Go feel beautiful. Go get
Yeah,
rest.
yeah,
Antonio,
yeah.
if you were to send a message in the bottle back to your 20-year-old handsome Latin Jesus-looking sister, what would you put in that bottle?
Man, that's a hard one because I feel like I have made peace with my through some counseling. I've made peace with my younger self. I've gotten to this might sound weird to some people out there, but I feel like I've gone back and had the conversations with my old self. But
can you remember one thing?
that.
that you went back
one
and
of the
said?
things that don't be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah,
Just don't.
that's good.
Don't.
Wow.
Just you're loved. You're so loved. Like you're worthy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you're worthy of love.
Think of a better way.
No, I know it's beautiful. Well, I have a question though. One thing. So music is a language. So when you play the piano and you're Spanish, does the music have a Spanish accent?
It does. If you listen closely to his piano, it has a theta.
No?
Re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do.
So, a dear, a
female deer.
And on that note, before we go into copyright infringement, thank you so much.
Oh, well, it was less than 4 bars. So
Less than
It was
fair use.
It's for educational purposes, right?
exactly.
Our twist on it. I don't think
Exactly.
everyone's saying quite like that.
Storia Tribe, it's always good to hang out with you. Marins, you guys are just gold. I think we could sit here in a
Oh my
and talk
gosh,
to you for a really long time. There's
exactly.
a couple more chapters to this one, so we'll
Yeah.
be sure to have you back. But thank you so much for sharing your hearts, your soul with us, and thank you for what you do
Gosh,
on these
thank you, guys.
stages, these worship stages around the world. You're releasing the voice of heaven, the sound of heaven, and even the
Hallelujah.
accents of heaven. So thank you for that, Antonio. We'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.
Thank you guys so much.